And now we'd like to welcome Vietnam War veteran Daniel Tassone to the show.
Hi, Daniel.
Good
Thanks for coming on.
Sam, Craig, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. I don't know where to begin. I have so many questions. Tell us a little bit about your life as it was and how the Vietnam War changed it.
Okay, well, when I was drafted into the Army, it was the fall of 1970.
So you were drafted?
I was drafted.
And
I was a lottery.
And that means you didn't
pick.
have a choice.
No, I did not have a choice.
Okay.
The only choice I had was to report immediately or enlist.
Okay.
And if you enlisted, it obligated you for one more year of service than if you just
took the
went in
draft.
as a draftee, right?
Okay.
So I enlisted to get more time to report because I was finishing my graduate degree at Clarkson University. Draft boards were very, very stringent.
Because I heard also that if you were in college that it kind of, you weren't in the draft.
That was true up until the fall of 1970,
Okay.
where the deferments for college and other reasons were eliminated.
Gotcha.
And so that was the onset of the lottery system. I got a very low number. I think I was the fourth number drawn, which meant I was going
Fourth number drawn out of how many numbers?
365.
Okay. Oh, really? 365 as in days in the year.
There you go.
Wow.
And so your birthday was your draft date.
Okay.
And
So you
my
had a lucky
birthday was
birthday.
drawn fourth. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was not feeling particularly fortunate.
So how were young people? How old were you then when you got drafted?
I was, I believe, 22 years old.
Wow.
I was. I'd already had a college degree, and I was in graduate school, by the way, to some extent, in an attempt to use that deferment. But all of a sudden, it was eliminated.
Wow. Is that because they needed more soldiers?
Absolutely. There was a tremendous number of individuals in the service, and there was just, because of the Vietnam conflict and other reasons, the need to have more and more. And I believe there was some desire to make it more equitable, if you will, that college privilege might not have been something.
If you were in college, you wouldn't. But so being in college, did you use your college experience or what you were learning in college when you served in the military?
No.
Okay. You were just, you were a
What
grunt?
did you do? And what branch did you go into?
Yes.
Yeah, I was in the Army, so when I was drafted, then I could have chosen different branches, but I chose the Army. And then I went to basic training like everybody else.
Where'd you go to basic?
I went to basic in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay.
All right. And then I went to advanced training ultimately in Kansas. That was where we trained before being shipped out to Vietnam.
And what was your advanced training in?
It was in survival.
Oh, just general combat.
Yeah.
Okay.
What to expect when you got to Vietnam and how to deal with it.
Gotcha.
Did it prepare you?
Somewhat.
Okay.
All right. There's no
way to prepare for it.
It's like people asking what was it like in Vietnam, and like, well, if you were there, you would know, and if you're not,
you won't know.
It's hard to know, but you can do your best. It's you can explain it.
Okay.
It was difficult.
So what did you do in Vietnam?
Well, primarily I
MOS?
traveled when I was in Vietnam. I primarily worked in the supply unit, and so I spent a lot of time on supply planes flying around, and a lot of time on helicopters, trying to bring needed supplies out to the field.
Okay.
So coming from the United States, and I know Kentucky can get warm, you know, when you got off the plane in Vietnam, what was your first impression like?
It's hot.
Yes.
It's raining.
Was it?
And it's dangerous.
All right.
Wow.
I would say all of those at once. I tried to prepare myself. I remember very vividly on my flight from the United States to Vietnam to prepare myself to get ready, but I wasn't ready.
Okay.
When that plane landed, my whole perspective on life
changed. Now, were the cities similar to the United States cities? Because I'm watching the special on XXI, but I know the servicemen weren't always in those locations.
No, we would generally land in Saigon. Okay. All right, and then be deployed from Saigon. So you might be in a clearing unit for 3 or 4 days waiting for orders. And I very vividly remember Saigon being very French influenced.
Really?
All the architecture in the homes. You could tell that the French had been there for a long time.
Right. And that was,
they were there first.
They were there for a while.
Beautiful. By the way, beautiful residences, but very compacted.
Right.
When you got 50 yards away from them, it was no longer impressive, I guess.
So when you went, did you have any brothers and sisters left behind? Were you married? Did you have children?
Well, I come from a large family. I actually had a brother who was in the Navy who had been deployed to Vietnam. I had an older brother who was a Marine and an older brother who was in the Air Force, so we were very steeped in the military. I was married when I went to Vietnam. I had a very close family, and so all that made it difficult.
How was communications? Were you able to call back or communicate back?
Zero.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as FaceTime,
Right.
the internet, a cell phone. There
Not
was
even
no,
regular phones. I remember being overseas, and I had to put quarters in the machine and all that kind of thing.
I would have loved to put quarters in the machine. We didn't have anything like it.
How long were you in Vietnam?
Just over 11 months.
Wow.
And that's a standard
1 year
tour?
was standard, and at the time that I was finishing up my tour, there was a desire to now reduce the number of soldiers in the service, and so I was offered the opportunity to get released.
And then you did time stateside, or?
No, when I got stateside, I came back into Oakland. Many of my colleagues will recall we weren't very welcome. It was a very difficult time. Protesters were very active and very aggressive. But when I got to the base in Oakland, I was offered the opportunity to get released from the Army in exchange for a couple of years in the reserves. So I took that option, and then I flew back east.
Nice.
Very happily so, very fortunately. I mean, if you watch this Ken Burns documentary, you can see the devastation was indescribable.
Did you lose many friends?
I have, I believe, 5 high school classmates who died in Vietnam. So, and then when you say friends, obviously, when you're in a unit, everybody's your friend.
Together,
So I've kept in touch with a few of them. But time has passed, and we move on. And
have you gone to D.C. to visit the Vietnam Memorial they have?
I have the opportunity from time to time to do work in the Washington area, and I never, ever go without going to the wall.
Very cool.
It's very moving, and if anybody has the opportunity, I think for historic reasons and to help you think about the world, the wall will bring you there.
Let me ask you this, because my father has since passed. He was in Vietnam. Do you ever really talk to your children or grandchildren about what Vietnam was like?
No.
Wow. No. My father never really kind of talked
Have they
to me
ever
about
asked
it.
you?
It's not that you run away from talking about it. It's just it just doesn't seem to. You don't seem to be able to relate it in a manner which is helpful. All right. So, coming here today is helpful. I think the documentary is mostly helpful. Obviously, there are people who will be traumatized by that documentary, but it's important.
Well, one thing I've noticed, and like the three of us are all ex-military personnel, is one of the things that I've noticed in media is, and in our country is, the service personnel in Vietnam were not treated, it seems, fairly when they came back. So now it's like when we go to conflict, people support the troops, even if they don't support the conflict that they're engaged in.
I would agree with that perspective. It was a very controversial war, as you know. It wasn't very transparent, all right? I think in today's environment, for example, I fly frequently, and invariably, if someone gets on a plane I'm on with a uniform on, they get high preferential treatment. We didn't have that. We were looked upon as being, maybe evil's too strong a word, but not. They
didn't like you. They didn't like you no matter where you were at, whether you were overseas or even in America. They kind of frowned upon you. I went in right after Vietnam. So.
And I would be more honest if I said I didn't like it either before I went in. But I wasn't an activist, if you will, but I wasn't supportive, and I didn't want to go, and I didn't think it was right. And then all of a sudden, you feel an obligation, and you fill it, and you hope others would respect that, but it really wasn't the way we felt. Today, it's different, I think.
So speaking of today, What do you do today?
Well, I'm a professor at RIT for many, many years. I was very fortunate. I chose more and more education as my path. My life circumstances supported that. And so I ended up in a career path that's been unbelievably
three
rewarding.
educators at the table,
here we
right?
go. Here we go. Cool. We don't have a lot of money here, but we got a lot of education.
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.